welcome back again. We're still in Module 1, and just a reminder of what we're covering in Module 1. We are covering cautions and considerations, which was the previous block, and right now we're going to discuss Chinese medical approach to using essential oils in formulation, and then we're going to go over the essential oil basics of going through some definitions and learning how to read our wonderful Materia Medica. And then we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about essential oil notes and the different parts of the plants. There we go. And and remember, as always, jot down questions, shoot an email to me, and we will get to them. So, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the Chinese medical approach to using essential oils in formulation. And just like with herbs, Western medical herbalism and essential oils are more likely than Chinese medicine to use single oils for herbs, but oils in this case. And just like in Chinese medicine, herbal practice, we very rarely use a single oil or herb. They're almost always used in formulation. And I think it's part of it's one thing that makes Chinese medicine, herbalism, and essential oil practices really effective. You're formulating for the individual in front of you, and B, you're creating a really balanced formula. And that is just so important. That's really, really key here. So, in some examples of when you might use a single oil would be, or an unbalanced formula, would be if there was like just really rampant toxic heat, and then you might have a formula that's all cold oils, but you're going to use that formula for a short period of time. That's not going to be something that's going to be used long-term at all. Yeah, it's going to be used until that toxic heat is cleared, the person's in a better place, and then you can create a new formula that's more balanced and matches their current situation. So there is that exemption that sometimes a single oil or unbalanced formula that's either really hot or really cold or really drying or something like that will be used for a short term for an acute situation. But in general, we're going to be looking at creating formulas that are balanced. And as you're going through this herbal program, I'm sure you've talked about that and gone over that and have a pretty good understanding of what that means. If you don't, let me know and we can talk about it. But just like with herbs, no one oil is good for a condition, a blanket condition. You have to look at the individual always, and the situation always, and the environment always. So it's that that saying in Chinese medicine of one disease, many diagnoses. So just because you have 4 people walk in with a headache, you don't say, oh, here's my headache blend, or here's my headache oil, because there could be 4 totally different headaches. You have a stagnation headache, a deficiency headache, a headache from liver yang rising. So that's, again, the beauty of Chinese medicine, that really individualized approach to diagnosis, and then following that individualized, detailed diagnosis becomes an individualized formula. And that plays true in essential oils, just like in the rest of the herbal medicine. And then now we'll just begin to move into some of the definitions that are going to be helpful and that you're going to hear as you start using essential oils. And if you've been using essential oils for a long time, it might be a little bit of review, but it's usually the Chinese medicine approach is a little bit different. So one really common one is neat versus dilution. So neat is just oil, just essential oil. So neat can be a single oil straight out of the bottle, no carrier oil added. you can also have a formula that's neat and undiluted. So you could blend 3 oils straight out of the bottle together into their own new bottle, no carrier oil. That's neat. So neat really means undiluted. And then dilution means that you've either have a single oil or you've created a blend, and then you're going to dilute that with a carrier oil, usually quite a bit. The most common dilution for essential oil formulas is about 6% essential oil, 94% carrier. So it's really, it's a pretty big dilution rate. And yeah, again, like we said, diluted can be a single oil, can be a formula. Neat, just the essential oil, can be single oil, can be a formula. And then single versus formula, you know, that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, you're either working with a single oil, just one oil, or you're working with some blend of 2 to 5 oils. That's generally the range in which we're going to stick, is probably like 3 to 5. Most Chinese medicine essential oil formulas are about 3 to 5 essential oils. And of course, either a single oil or a formula can either be neat or diluted, as we just discussed. Okay, and now we're going to move into breaking down the materia medica and how to read and approach this essential oil materia medica, because there's going to be some terms in here that are a little bit different from, some are familiar, some are a little bit different from the herbal materia medica. So I'm going to open up to an oil here. Let's all open up to the same oil. So I'll just pick a random one. Frankincense, page 50. So we're going to look at frankincense on page 50 just to get an idea of the different terms that we're going to be looking at. And then I'll hold this up just for a moment. Mine's written all over and highlighted. That helps me to view it quickly. But we're looking at frankincense on page 50, and the part that we're going to be looking at and breaking down is right up here. These are the terms we're going to be defining. And it's laid out, the whole materia medica is laid out this way. So you have to start out with a Chinese name. Not all of them have a Chinese name. They're not all Chinese herbs. And then the family, that's the botanical family that this oil, this plant comes from. And then the most important ones that we're going to be looking at, I'll kind of highlight. So the note is very important. And you can see that the note in this case is a base note. And notes are very, very important in formulation and in use. So we will talk more in depth about notes in the next little block of this, of module 1. And then we've got aroma. And the aroma part actually isn't all that, it's not all that, we don't use it all that much, but it's informative. If it's an oil you don't have on hand, something you're not familiar with, you can learn it out. The color can be good because a lot of oils are adulterated. So if you get frankincense and it's like blue, or something that's not in here, clear to yellow brown is a pretty wide range. So it's not all that helpful in this one. But for some of them, it could be helpful if you're worried about adulteration. You could look in here to see if the color matches up. And then another important part is the parts distilled. And we're also going to talk a little bit further about that, because the different parts of the plants, as you know from studying herbal medicine, have different functions and different energetic resonances. So in this part, we've got a gum. It's a resin, frankincense. So it's a secretion from the plant. And then gives you the regions that it's grown, and which can also be helpful if you're thinking about resonance and the places might be a little bit different, or so it gives you the region. And then the taste is important as well. So the taste is, we've got spicy, we've got bitter, that's what this one here is. And then the nature is really important. So the nature is basically the temperature. I call that the temperature. It's whether it's warming or it's cooling or it's neutral, or whether it's hot or it's cold. So that's an important one. So, and then next we've got the affinity. So that's referring to the channels. So frankincense goes to lung, heart, and kidney. And that's an important one. And then the major chemical constituents are listed out there. I personally don't know all that much about that aspect of essential oils. The skin type for which is helpful, if you're doing skincare regimes or something, that's helpful. Otherwise, that doesn't mean too much. And then also very important is the dosage. So frankincense comes in at an 8% dilution. And that's going to be important when you're choosing what oils to use and what percentage to use them at within a formula. So we'll look at that every time we make a formula. And then also very important is contraindications. Contraindication in the case of frankincense is pregnancy. And though it doesn't list it here, there's a list at the beginning of the Materia Medica, which tells you oils that you need to be cautious with children, and frankincense is on that. So I would add children to this. And again, contraindication, you need to look at each oil and each individual and each situation, but you definitely want to keep those in mind. And then below that are the actions. But before we go over that really quickly, I'd like to come back up to this top list that we just went through. And so really the most important ones on this list are the note, the parts distilled, the nature or temperature, and the affinity, the channels entered, and dosage, and contraindications. And then below that, pretty straightforward, gets into actions. And then below that, it gets into indications and use, and suggestions or protocols that these might be applicable for. And then while we're talking about it and talking about the Materia Medica, I'll just give a brief little rundown of a couple of things of how I use my Materia Medica specifically. And one really important distinction between the herbal Materia Medica and the essential oil Materia Medica is that a single oil shows up in numerous categories. So, for example, peppermint is in cool release exterior, it's in extinguish wind. So they'll show up in more than one, which I think is really helpful. And I actually sort of approach herbal medicine in that way too. But it's really laid out here in the essential oil Materia Medica. So what I did was go through, and for each oil, it's time consuming, but it was worth it. It really helped me when I'm making a formula. So I went through and I found each category that an oil is in. So frankincense is in clear heat from the lung, heart, and stomach. It's in invigorate blood, and it's in calm shen. So I did that at the top of the page. I don't know if that's focusing, I hope so. But I did it at the top of the page for every oil Materia Medica. We got lavender and its various categories. And so it's really helpful when I am creating a formula and I'm considering a particular oil, it's just right up there. And then I did the same thing for every oil for pregnancy and children as contraindications. And if they have those contraindications, I wrote them right up at the top of the page. And I did that for every oil. So I'm going through again, in especially with the children, it's not listed on every one that you shouldn't use it with children, but there's that list at the beginning of ones to be cautious with children. So I just went ahead and put it on each page. So here we go, we've got pine, contraindicated usually with children. And just for ease of use, so it's right up there, it's at the top of the page. And we can talk about this a little bit more when we meet in person too, and we actually have our materia medicas and we're all in the same room, have some kind of tricks that are helpful. And another thing you can see, probably noticed that I did with my materia medica. So this materia medica is based on Jeffrey's teachings. It pulls directly from them. But Jeffrey continues to teach about essential oils and has taught, more than what's in here. And when I took essential oils with Josephine Spilka, she had studied essential oils pretty extensively with Jeffrey, and she had more to say about the oils. And then I also bring this materia medica when I go and listen to Jeffrey, or I'll maybe fill it in after when I get home. But when he mentions something about an oil that's not listed in the indications that are printed on every page, I go in and I add them. So I would really encourage you, as we begin to go through the materia medica, to take notes in your materia medica. Either to take the notes there, or if you need to sort things a little bit more than that, take them on a separate piece of paper or type them up and then add them to your materia medica, because this stuff it's a lot of it's like the heart of using essential oils. And if that's in a separate notebook and set away, and all you have is this print information when you're in clinic and creating formulas, I don't think you're gonna have the same depth of information available to you. So it's really helpful to add that stuff in and have it in that materia medica that you're going to use to create formulas on a daily basis. So that's just a little side note, a personal tip of how I do that. Okay, so let's see where we are. We talked about formulation, and also part of the Chinese medicine approach to essential oils is they're really the essence of the plant. And that's not unique to Chinese medicine. Obviously, everybody who uses essential oils honors that and recognizes that, that we're really working with the essence of the plant. And in that sense, they resonate with our essence. So you can do really deep work with essential oils, and you don't need much. Less is more. You just don't need much. You don't need high percentages. You don't need to cover large areas of the body. Just a little drop can really do a lot. And then there's the direct connection to the olfactory nerve in the brain through the nose. So they work with your brain immediately. So that's, you can see, you can smell an oil and have an immediate physical reaction, and that's where your experiential assignments are going to come in, and those are really neat. They're fun to do. And Josephine Spilka, my main teacher with essential oils, one thing she said one time that struck a chord with me is that the oil brings the plant's message. It brings the message that's already there. And she contrasted that to a needle in acupuncture that you can manipulate to have different therapeutic actions, but that you don't have the same amount of influence or control over how a body is going to use an essential oil. And it's taking the essence of the plant, communicating with the essence of the person, and you can hope you found the right one, and you'll see a good result. But that you have less control, less less ability to manipulate the action. And we'll continue to talk more about the sort of depth of essential oils, so different oils are going to, different notes are going to influence different types of qi, different humors, qi and blood, and but all oils have an immediate effect on the wei qi, because we smell them, we take them in, we're interacting with an aroma environment, we breathe it into our lung, immediate effect on the wei qi. And as well, all essential oils resonate with and have an effect on yuan qi. So the entire Materia Medica, every essential oil interacts with wei qi, interacts with yuan qi. And this will come up, so that's just a great thing to keep in mind. And then it's also going to come up more in depth and have, you know, when we talk about divergent channels, using essential oils with divergent channel treatments when we meet in person in September, October, and that will, you know, essential oils are really well suited to working with the divergent meridians for that reason, because the divergent meridians work with the conversation between wei qi and yuan qi and wei qi, and essential oils do too. So just throw that little bit in there. So I'm going to check where we are in time and see if we should start a new video. We're at about 21 minutes here. We've gone over reading the... So I think I'll end here for now. We've gone over cautions in the previous one, and then in this block we looked at Chinese medicine approach to formulation and using essential oils. We went over essential oil basics and definitions, and in the next module, or the next block, what we're going to talk about is we're going to go more in depth and the different notes, top note, middle note, and base note, and we are going to discuss the different plant parts, the parts distilled. So yeah, see you at the next one.